himself as a grandchild who is African diaspora. His daughter has a child who is Ethiopian American. So the senator understands Africa. The senator was on the Foreign Affairs Committee. He goes to Africa every single year. In Michigan, he's a man of faith, like many in the ways of Oklahoma. He understands that consensus building, dialogue brings, makes us pull together. And, it means like higher being, be it God or any of our many African deities or just, the different people that we are centered when we think about conflict and resolution. So we're so grateful to Senator Einhoff of Oklahoma. As it happens, Oklahoma is also the home state of our congressional Cameroon caucus chair, Congressman Steve Russell, who will not be coming back next year, but we're so happy for his work. He was in Cameroon in February as a request of the Cameroon American Council. Today, we have some really wonderful, my mind is blown, and it's going to be an hour discussion, oh gosh, I'm really emotional because what is going on in Cameroon, what is going on with Cameroonians in the diaspora, what is going on with Cameroonian allies in the diaspora. So our panel is made up of folks from Cameroon, folks who live here in the diaspora, and allies in the diaspora. I'm just going to go right in to say that for the last couple of months, we have been working with different groups. Last year, we organized an advocacy day here in Congress for the Southern Cameroon women. Movement, MOL was part of that. Was part of that. We have worked with folks who consider themselves federalists. We have worked with folks who, consider themselves just Cameroonians. We've worked with BAS, the Brigade Anti-Salina. We've worked with MRC, we were in Congress. We've done 2 years ago and throughout. This is MRC. So we've pretty much worked with all the different groups. And of course, including the other side, right? The government of Cameroon, works with them on WALLA. So the government Council really feels fortunate that we've been able to work with different fractions out there, including some folks that, folks may consider as, extremists on both sides, right? Because we feel that, like Senator Einhoff, that faith can really bring folks together because everyone really just wants, at the end of the day, peace, right? So the consensus, Ms. Julie Obatunde will talk to us more about that. What is the consensus? What are the mechanisms, the tools, and how she works with her group and many leaders on working on getting diverse and divergent voices together. I'm just going to go down the line and introduce, and then we're going to start. The speakers as they've been here. Mama Carola is my personal hero. So of course I'm biased, right? Not only is she a fierce woman, she is also from the diaspora. She is from the DC Metro, Howard, New Howard. She's a community organizer, she's a business leader. She also happens to be the first female presidential candidate, which, and I would even say like the first true presidential candidate. I'm sorry, I'm biased, I don't know what to tell you. And she's been part of the fight in Cameroon. She's from Cameroon. She's like, I only have a couple of days. I'm like, please come. And she believes in the consensus. We may not agree on everything, but I do agree that as a fellow secretary, I appreciate her voice and her sacrifice. She's going to talk about refugees and how, what is the refugee crisis? How can this be part of a dialogue for sustainable, fallow land? If you want to call it South Cameroon, Amazonia, Motherland, just that region that unfortunately the oppressors are making us basically fight over it now. And this is the history throughout the continent. We have whether or not we want 2-state, 10-state. The fact of the matter is, people should not die because of what we believe in. It's just with, you know, the political leaning, same thing with religious leaning. People should not die for what they believe in. It is a very serious thing in Cameroon. We need to have a referendum so folks can decide what they want. And whatever they decide that they want, they don't have to give it to them, right? And within that referendum, folks brought up 1961 as a place where we can kick off, but not where we're going to stay. Because if we stay in 1961, there will be no independence a referendum, right? If we stay in 1961, there will be no 10-state federation, you know. In this new age, we want to pick up what happened there, but we want to expand it for a new generation, right? And so we're excited, really excited that on that, Mr. FONTEM has, FONTEM NIBA has been so generous with his time, with his expertise, with his patience, and coming out of prison, and just, you know, he's been traveling, and I guess, you know, not I guess, but I can only think that he's very reflective, and for him to pick us today to share his thoughts is really, really an absolute pleasure. And he talks about federation, specifically 2-state federation, but also what's out there. I believe, you know, he's for a 2-state federation, but as a consensus builder that he is, he also recognizes that the other folks are one other things, right? My complete honor to finally connect and work with the very brilliant mind who is Mr. Bobga, who is passionate. I feel like you and I are like, we're from like the same spirit, you know, like very passionate about what we do, have a lot to learn from him, very youthful in his mindset and how he comes across. He will be an absolute delight to share his strong position, which, like many of the other panelists, you know, we may or may not agree, but we just should not kill each other because of our thoughts. We really should not. And we're so humbled that Mr. Bobga would share with us, you know, why consensus, you know, why 3R, why referendum, and specifically what he believes in, right? And with that said, we are gonna start. Please, just one last housekeeping. We're gonna take questions, so if you can post your questions, write them out, and then we'll read it. As you know, our panelists are super busy. It is the end of the year. Many of them, actually not many of them, all of them have been in the Senate many times advocating all these issues. So we're hopeful that we can get through with this and go back upstairs and go advocate. We're in the beautiful committee room, but it's not enough, right? We need to go knock on some more doors. So please write your questions, and we are going to welcome Ms. Judy. Thank you. Okay, so we have folks who are from far and near, right? We're excited that some folks are joining us here from other parts of the world, including other diasporans such as South Africa, and just want to say thank you. We welcome your questions. Hopefully you will get upstairs. South Africa is on the UN Security Council next year, so we're hopeful that when you go back, you will meet with your South African embassy and have them put this on the agenda. So thank you very much. And yeah, please, you know, Judy of Refinery. Yes. Thank you.
Hello. spoke about this issue of the consensus on the 3 R's, the refugee crisis. There was a referendum and the recount. I believe it was last Friday, we met and concluded on certain issues in regards to what the consensus should be about. Now, those 3 R's are very large topics. You can talk about anything within the refugee crisis. You can talk about anything within the referendum and the recount. Those are broad topics. So when people are looking into a consensus, the first thing we have to do, these are the steps, general steps, not to say there aren't smaller ones, but when you're taking a consensus, the first thing that's very important to do is to understand the situation, right? Understand why a consensus is necessary, understand what brought about, what was the cause of so much divergence that people didn't already agree on one thing. So we know with Cameroon, the cause is the economic distress. It's just so much unrest, conflict over land, conflict over resources, disagreement with leadership, etc., etc., etc. So understanding the situation is the first step when you're trying to create consensus amongst several diverging thoughts. It's very, very important. The second thing I would say is a collection of the stances to be considered, right? So we want to collect what are the schools of thought, and Sylvie did a good job of doing this at the beginning of last Friday's meeting. She went around the room and asked everyone, what are your schools of thought? What do you believe? Some people said, okay, 2-state federation. Others said, okay, 10-state federation. How can you vote on something when you don't know what the options are, right? Is everyone just going to come up with their flag and say, no, mine, no, mine, no? We have to have an understanding of what are our options. And it's important for everyone to understand the rules of engagement, right? When this is happening, we have to know it's okay to disagree. This is not a point for us to be fighting over who's right and who's wrong. This is a point at which we come together to voice the major schools of thought so that we can see what options we are working with. And not only see what options we're working with, but to see and understand the implications of each option. What are the implications? What are the consequences, the pros and the cons of a 2-state federation? And same with the 10-state federation. Are there certain benefits you can get with the 2-state federation that you cannot and will not be able to access with the 10-state federation, and vice versa? So I believe this is when I'm going to call the next step comes in. What I call informed parties or informed associations should step up. So the economists of the land, the healthcare associations of the land, people who understand Cameroon from the inside out, people who know and understand what the implications and the consequences will be if they choose one position, one political system over another political system. These bodies should come out and begin to have conferences, town halls, briefings to educate people. Listen, if you choose this system, not in a biased fashion, but in a very objective fashion, these informed bodies should be able to come out and have general meetings, right, gatherings, conferences, where they can educate people and say, this is what will happen with the economy. This is what you will have access to. This is how the hierarchy will look if you choose this system over that system, so that people can say, oh, wow, you don't understand how many minds might change or how many people might be re-educated when they start to understand the consequence or the implication of choosing A over B over C, right? It can cause them to say, wow, well, all I really wanted was this result. I thought if I chose a 2-state federation, I would get this result. But now you're telling me that actually if I choose a 2-state federation or 10-state or whatever, that I'm going to experience this and this and this. And now I have to stop and think about this, right? Now I have to stop and think. I have to stop and be conscious of my decision. Because now, when the people are going to the polls, going to the ballots to vote, now you don't just have angry people that are just going with anger, with a sense of vengeance, with a sense of mistrust. Now you have educated people, right? People that have been taught and now understood, have come together to say, you know what? Now I understand that I'm not only voting for a choice, but I'm voting for a choice and I'm voting for a consequence. That consequence doesn't necessarily have to be negative, but they have the understanding that I'm voting for an effect, and my vote is the cause to that effect, right? And so when you understand the cause and you understand how it relates to that effect, you'll be more careful with your vote, right? your vote. So it was really necessary for people to, like I said, step one, understand the situation that even caused the necessity for a consensus, right? What was the divergence? What was the disagreement in the first place? Step two, collect the stances that you need to consider. Collect the schools of thought so that people know what their options are. There's this school of thought, there's that school of thought. Know your options on what you can vote, what you will be voting on, and understand what the people think. Step three, education of the people and understanding of each school of thought by these larger bodies, which I will go ahead and just call informed bodies, people that are informed on economics more than everyone else, people that are informed on healthcare systems, that are informed on basic needs of the state and its systems. And then the next step would be narrowing down. If there are several thoughts, there are like 200 different opinions, right? You're not going to have a ballot with 200 different options. That's way too overwhelming. So you need to have what I'm sure a lot of you have probably heard of, something called preliminaries, right? You can have preliminary votes to gradually shed away votes, right? So there can be preliminary, different levels of preliminary votes so that people can vote on what will end up on the ballot. And these votes need to be secure. There need to be systems in place to make sure that the votes are collected in a secure fashion, nothing's tampered with, right? Preferably electronic, but even if there's no access to that, then the right bodies, the right people, personnel should be put in place to make sure that the votes are guarded, because these votes are people's destinies, are people's political destinies connected to the future of their security in their country. So it's very important. Once they've narrowed down, if let's say if there are several votes that need to be narrowed down, once they've done that, or if that doesn't need to be done, the next step is to make sure that a secure system is in place so that people's votes can be safely connected. No one needs to be getting shot, killed, stabbed, maimed at a ballot. That doesn't need to be happening, right? We don't need temper tantrums being employed by one party or by one school of thought in order to overtake another party's school of thought. It needs to be implemented, and this is another burden, I guess, that I will put not just on the people, but on the informed bodies, right? Those associations of economists, of healthcare advisors, of educators that can come together and educate the people to say, you know what, as we are here to gather your opinions, to gather your schools of thought, please understand that we will disagree. That's okay. Please understand that when we take this vote, it is important that you respect the outcome. Someone said that at our last meeting last Friday, and I remember it was this gentleman. He said that, and I respected it so much. He was disagreeing with something that, we were talking about, and he said, nonetheless, I respect the outcome. Beautiful. That is what needs to happen when you're taking a vote. Disagree, but respect the outcome. If that culture, right, if that psychology can be instilled in the people that are voting, in the electorate that is of Cameroon, the citizens of Cameroon, the vote will be much more effective when people can respect the outcome, no matter what it is, so long as it is crowdsourced from the people and everyone has a chance to vote. Another step that's very important is to identify who is eligible to vote, right? Who is eligible to vote? If you're talking about Southern Cameroon and you're saying we want Southern Cameroonians to vote about this Southern Cameroonian issue, then we need to identify, first of all, who is a Southern Cameroonian? I'm from Nigeria. Hi. What's stopping me from going to Cameroon and saying, hey, I want to vote, I'm from Southern Cameroon? So we have to have systems in place to be able to say, who is even Southern Cameroonian? Is there a mark on your face? Is it written on your forehead? Can I tell? Or else, that's when rigging happens, guys. That is when rigging happens. That's when injustice can creep in, when there's no identification, when there's no understanding of who has that privilege of being able to say, I am going to speak for my land that is Southern Cameroon, because I am Southern Cameroonian, I have the right to do that. I'm Nigerian, right? Judy, I'm Nigerian. I don't have the right to go and speak for a Southern Cameroonian, because at the end of the day, I'm coming back to DC to live my life, right? I'm not going to be there with you. I'm coming back to DC to live my life. Maybe I'll go to Nigeria to visit. If I happen to go to Cameroon, maybe just for sightseeing. But you have to live in that decision. You have to live in those implications. So we need to be able to identify who are these people that have the right to decide the destiny of their future, the destiny of their leadership. Once those decisions have been made and the outcome, the votes have been cast, there need to be very secure systems in place in order to tally the votes and conclude. Rigging and injustice and unfairness can happen at different levels. This is another one of those levels where that can happen, right? In the tallying, if someone who is for 2 state federations starts to notice, I'm seeing lots of 10 state federation votes, I don't like this. Let me set it on fire. How would that be, right? We can't have that. So we really have to have secure systems, secure personnel in place to tally the votes, people that are just, people that are honest, maybe even a third party that isn't 2 states, 10 states, this state, that state, who doesn't represent any of those schools of thought, so that we can make sure that fairness is carried out. The next step, and one of the last steps of the consensus system would be having the resources. This is very important. Having the resources, the personnel prepared after the votes have been tallied and concluded upon to enforce the decision. Because in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to worry that, people are going to disagree. In a perfect world, we would just say, okay, 10 state one, 2 state one, this one won, that one won. Let's go about our lives. It's okay. But we know, based on history, there tend to be uprisings sometimes. So let's hope for the best and prepare for the worst, right? What does preparing for the worst and hoping for the best mean? It means having enforcement, law enforcement, local enforcement ready, that are on the side of the people, just personnel that can represent enforcement, that will be able to enforce the choice that was made, so that people can respect the outcome, and those who do not respect the outcome, who are saying, no, I'm going to take to violence. I'm going to take to violence to overthrow you, to overthrow this decision. I'm going to take to violence to go to all those places that disagreed with me and overthrow that decision because it didn't agree with mine. Someone can stand there and enforce peace. I know when we think of peace, we don't think of force. But when there are people trying to force and say, no, there will be peace. Thank you. Sit down, right? So that's one of the last steps. And after that, we just have to really make sure there's systems in place to, within the government, to make sure that the people that are going to be carrying out the choice that the people have made, those leadership roles, will have accountability. So that in case they decide, we're not going to respect the role of the people, we're going to do our own thing, there need to be checks and balances to be able to check them and stop them and say, no, this is what the people have decided, and this is how it will be carried out. It sounds like a simple process. Clearly, it's easier said than done, but when we can take each step of that process and break it down and really speak mind to mind, not as enemies, but as people that really just want one result, better Cameroon. Maybe 10 state is the way to go with that, maybe 2 state, maybe some of these other schools of thought, but you want a better Cameroon. When everyone can at least agree on that, at least, I think it will be easier to come to a consensus that will make the country better.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And just going back on what Judy said, so some of the things that folks said on why a consensus was no more bloodshed, we have to give and take, peace for all, provide a basis for everyone to respect their outcome. Others said the rate of killing is increasing, one dialogue, we want it at a neutral place, stop the killing, that's why we're coming together, even though we have some folks are restorationists, some folks are for federalists, some folks are just francophones, or who just want 10 states or 4 states. So these are some of the other things, some folks said they wanted a consensus because it wasn't provided before, right? Some folks said it's not the solution. That's the dictator who's there now. And some folks said, Dia was not elected, so they wanted consensus that they can make their own choices. So from, thank you again, Judy. So from that consensus building, the 3 R's came about. And in case you're wondering why the United States Senate, so these are some, 4 things. The United States and Cameroon, Judy mentioned resources. Where are these resources going to come up, for this 3 R's? The military hub in Cameroon is important to the United States. That's the United States, Cameroon is the head of the 4-country task force of Boko Haram, which Mama Kai is going to mention how Boko Haram terrorists have affected us and just led to refugees. Cameroon is a transportation hub, right? So the United States needs Cameroon's seaport, which includes seaports in southern Cameroon and also known as Northwest and Southwest region. 4 countries like Congo, the 2 Congos actually, Chad, Central Africa, Cameroon. So the United States needs Cameroon seaports for those countries that are landlocked. Cameroon is also an energy hub for the United States, right? So why should we be, or the Senate asking for these resources to support the 3 Rs? Because Cameroon is an energy hub. The piracy in East Horn of Africa affects Cameroon, and Cameroon is part of the Gulf of Guinea, where we in the United States have seen increased energy supply. Cameroon is also a refugee hub, right? Cameroon is a diaspora hub. Right here in the Senate, Senator Booker of New Jersey has traced his DNA to Cameroon. Congresswomen Robin Kelly and Karen Bass have traced his DNA to Cameroon. So Cameroon has recent immigrants. Cameroon has first and second generation as well as DNA. And Cameroon is a refugee hub. The United States needs Cameroon for the 500,000 or more refugees that come from Central Africa, that come from Boko Haram. So the United States needs to make sure that the first R, refugee, is part of the consensus and part of the dialogue. Mama Kawala, please join me in welcoming her. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning to everybody. Thank you very much to the Cameroon American Council for organizing this and for inviting us. Sylvie caught me, really literally caught me about 48 hours ago and asked me to join the panel, and I'm very happy to do so. I think the idea of working on consensus is fantastic. What is lacking in Cameroon today is the ability to have this conversation, to be the ability to bring around the table the different opinions, the different points of view, and to begin to work towards solutions. So the 3 Rs that referendum and recount are definitely issues which are on the mind of Cameroonians. I'm just visiting here. I'm just here for a couple of weeks. I'm going back to Cameroon next week. And these are definitely issues which are on the minds of Cameroonians. I think we'll start with refugees and bring up a couple of other points which are also concerning Cameroonians. I am 53 years old, and I grew up knowing that Cameroon was a host country to refugees. I remember in the 70s we had South African refugees. In the 90s we had Rwandan refugees. And in the 2000s and up to date, right now in Cameroon are about 271,000 refugees from Central African Republic and about 101,000 refugees from Nigeria. Up to 2015, this was the case. And I could never have dreamt, never in my worst nightmares could I have dreamt that Cameroonians would be refugees. Today, we are counting a little bit over 50,000 refugees who are registered in Nigeria as refugees, and within Cameroon, we have over 750,000 displaced people. About 240,000 of them are from the extreme north. They are displaced due to the Boko Haram conflict, and about 500,000 displaced due to the conflict in the northwest and southwest regions. So according to UNHCR and the Office of International Migration, the international bodies that work on the question of refugees, they count 1.1 million people of concern within the territory of Cameroon today. But this figure can be a bit misleading, because the truth about Cameroon is that we have conflict on 3 fronts. We have the Boko Haram conflict, which affects the 3 northern regions in the country. We have the Central African rebels who have formed incursions into the east and into the Adamawa region, and we have the conflict in the northwest and southwest regions. So 6 out of 10 regions in Cameroon today are experiencing active conflict. The number of people affected politically, economically, socially is over 11 million Cameroonians out of a population of about 23 million. So our country is in dire straits. And I loved and I agreed to participate in this because we have to stop arguing as Cameroonians and come to a consensus to bring an end to all of this. We are literally losing our country with every 24 hours that go by. Now, these conflicts are very different. Boko Haram is an extreme religious group with also a political agenda, not based in, did not start off based in Cameroon, but was able to recruit heavily in the extreme north of Cameroon, and the group was able to implant itself. Even though the force of Boko Haram has significantly diminished, we still have to keep our eye on Boko Haram. They were able to carry out very, very severe attacks in northern Nigeria in October and November of this year. And the nature of this group is that when you manage to bring it down, they fall back and they reorganize themselves and begin to attack again. So we still have a crisis, a severe crisis, as I said, 240,000 displaced people in the extreme north of Cameroon, and over 1,500 people, some estimates go up to 2,000 people who have been killed in the extreme north of Cameroon since 2014. The conflict in the east is rebels who are looking for financial gain, and they too have been able to recruit in Cameroon, because when I hear people say these are Central African rebels, we should be careful. The truth on the ground is that they are mixed groups. They are carrying out kidnappings. In 2017, these groups carried out over 1,000 kidnappings in the Adamawa and the East region. This is the least talked about conflict in Cameroon today. 4 out of the 5 divisions in the Adamawa region are affected, and there are over 4,000 displaced people in that area as well. And then we come to the acute crisis. So those ones we can say we have non-Cameroonians who have made incursions into Cameroon, even if they've been able to to recruit Cameroonians. At the origin, these conflicts are originated outside of Cameroon. We get to the northwest and southwest, where the conflict is between Cameroonians. And today, when we talk of an armed conflict, it's important to go back a little bit historically and to say the protests for Anglophone rights began in October 2016. Dr. FONTEM, who is beside me, I think the last time we saw each other, he was in jail. Barrister Bobga, these are people that we were talking to each other on a daily basis when these protests started. They were non-violent. These were non-violent protests in October 2016, and they remained non-violent until November 2017. So over a year, this protest, this fight, was a non-violent fight. How did the violence, where did the violence come from? Why was there an armed fight? Government responded with violence from day one. From the day of the very first protest, government responded with violence and violated lawyers and teachers who protesting, citizens who were protesting, and there are key moments where the fight became radicalized. First moment was the internet shutdown. Cameroon experienced one of the longest internet shutdowns in history, close to 100 days of internet shutdown, and that took the fight from activists into the general population. Because when you cut off my internet, you have violated my rights. You have violated my right to information. You have violated certain of my economic rights. You have made it extremely difficult for me to conduct business and to communicate. This was a key turning point. The other turning points were the 22nd of September and the 1st of October, when people in the Northwest and Southwest regions came out non-violently and they were shot. Our government, our army, shot its own citizens who were completely unarmed. This is what radicalized the fight. And today we have a multitude of armed groups on the ground. We have a catastrophic situation, and the losses on the Anglophone side are incredible. It's very difficult to estimate the number of dead because they are not counted, but even the most conservative estimates show over 1,000 dead between November 2017 and today. Over 100 villages have been burnt, and today we have a situation where it is difficult to know who is doing what in the Anglophone regions. We have violence from the state, we have violence from the armed groups. We have kidnappings that are going on, we have people who are killed, and it is not always clear who is doing what on the ground. Now, with these three very different types of conflicts, we have to ask ourselves, what is the root cause? Because these three conflicts, as different as they have a single root cause. The single root cause is catastrophic governance on the part of the BIA regime, catastrophic governance that has been unable to deliver at least on three fronts. One, unable to deliver basic services. 50% of Cameroonians don't have water to drink. 50% of Cameroonians don't have electricity, don't have access to electricity. We don't have roads, we don't have healthcare, we don't have a decent education system. That is true wherever you go in Cameroon. All 10 regions, this is the situation. And if Boko Haram was able to recruit in the extreme north, it is not by accident, because the extreme north and the northwest regions today qualify as some of the poorest regions in Cameroon. So the ability of extremist groups to recruit has very much to do with this inability of government to provide basic services. Secondly, the BIA regime has failed catastrophically in its ability to deliver political services. I will not go into the history of the independence of Cameroon. I think I have co-panelists who will go into that. But the regime has failed to build a post-colonial nation, a nation that accepts the fact that it was colonized and builds a new identity. This is why today, 58 years after independence, we are talking about Anglophone versus Francophone. It's a total inability to build a nation. The government of Cameroon, as we speak, has two constitutions that it navigates between. It has been unable to take decisions. The last constitution was approved in 1998. Here we are in 2018, and many aspects of that constitution are not implemented to date. Finally, the government of Cameroon has failed catastrophically in delivering basic human rights. We live in a dictatorship, and if we are not clear about that, we will never be able to find solutions to our problem. We live in a dictatorship, we live in an autocracy. There is a semblance of political freedom, but everybody who has come up seriously against this government knows that you will be arrested, your life is in danger, and your rights can be violated at any moment. We were in an electoral year in 2018. Leading up to that electoral year, political parties were banned from holding meetings. On the day that the elections were being launched in Cameroon, 2 of the major parties saw their meetings banned by the party in power and the administration. So, this government has failed to deliver basic services, failed to build a nation, and failed to provide us with fundamental human rights. So how do we get out of here? The proposal that our group, Stand Up for Cameroon, brings to this consensus table is a proposal of political transition. I listened to some of the very nice ideas about consensus, but I think the cart is before the horse. There will be no consensus with the Libya regime. Our job 1 is to bring that regime to a close. There will be no referendums. There will be no decent elections as long as the Libya regime is in power. So our first job is to bring the Libya regime to a close. To us at Stand Up Cameroon, this is done through massive, non-violent protests on the ground in Cameroon. I see people protesting all around the world. That is great. But where the protest must happen without violence is on the ground in Cameroon and
for justice.
particularly in Yaoundé. Particularly in Yaoundé, because that is where the center of
Man
power
for justice.
is. So there must be
justice.
pressure from within Cameroon and pressure from without. And that is where the pressure of the diaspora becomes very, very important. The pressure of our of countries which are partner countries like the United States becomes important. And here I have a clear ask. I have a clear ask to the US government and to all of the other governments that are friends of Cameroon. Our president has videos. At this very moment, the government of Cameroon has videos where it has lined up its citizens and shot them, including women with babies on their backs. Yet, Mr. Biya travels around the world, his government officials travel around the world without any stress whatsoever. It is time for the rest of the world to call on the Cameroon government, who has signed regulations and accords and so on and so forth, and demand answers to them for the killings that have happened in the extreme north and in the northwest and southwest of the country. We have proof, satellite proof, that villages, entire villages have been burnt by the Cameroonian army. We have an admission of the Cameroonian army general that the villages have been burnt. What we need from our friends is not to come and fight our fight for us, but to impose travel restrictions. Mr. Biya, his family, members of his government should not be able to travel freely in the United States until they have answered for these gross human rights violations. They should not have access. So we are asking for travel ban. We are asking for restriction to packed assets. All of these people have packed assets in the United States and in other Western countries. They have villas. They have, while they are killing the children of other Cameroonian citizens, their children are sitting here in beautiful houses with access to water and electricity and the best schools and hospitals, and they're enjoying life. So that's a clear ask. And this will help us with the pressure that we are putting on the ground in Cameroon and the pressure without. We have to get rid of the BR regime. Get rid of the BR regime to do what? To be able to have our national dialogue. That is step 2. This discussion we are having must be a national dialogue in Cameroon. Today, there are so many political opinions, not just about Anglophone rights, but about the country as a whole. We must have a national dialogue about our national identity, who we are as Cameroonians, what does it mean to be a Cameroonian? We must have a national dialogue about the form of our state. What kind of state do we want? Federal, decentralized, unitary. All of those opinions have partisans in Cameroon. We must be able to sit down and talk about it. And then we must redefine the relationship between the citizen and the state. Because that is what has been destroyed through 58 years of dictatorship. Citizens in Cameroon don't know how to demand their right, and the state does not know that its job is to deliver services to the citizens. After that national dialogue, we must then move into rewriting our constitution and reforming our institutions, including the electoral system. So for us at Stand Up for Cameroon, you cannot talk about elections with Mr. Biya. You cannot talk about elections with a dictator. Nowhere in history has anybody been able to beat a dictator at elections, because the dictator entirely controls all of the institutions in the country. So for us, it is only after this process of getting rid of the regime, step 1, national dialogue, step 2, reform of institutions, step 3, that we can talk about elections or referendums or any form of vote. So this is the process for which we stand. We would like our friends, such as the US and other Western countries, to begin talking about political transition to our government, giving them a way out. We want justice in Cameroon, but we want to move forward. Punishing these people will not be our #1 priority. So start talking to them and giving them a way out, a country where they can go and find safe haven, a way that they can leave the country. But today, my appeal to Cameroonians in Cameroon is that ground pressure. We must fight. This fight cannot be fought outside Cameroon. We must fight the fight inside Cameroon, and we must do so without violence, with extreme pressure on the government where it is, that is in Yaoundé, on Cameroonians outside Cameroon, to continue the pressure with our friends. Ban these people from traveling. Let them begin to feel the heat. Confiscate their assets. Let them begin to stop enjoying the fruits of their 36 years of autocracy and of violating the rights of the Cameroonian people. And for us, this is where we can build consensus. This is the way forward for our country, Cameroon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Amaka. And this is a wonderful segue. Yes, last week the United States Security Council, for the folks who are out of South Africa who are here joining us, did put out a statement on Cameroon, right? That there needs to be a dialogue. So this discussion is coming together so that when the Cameroon government and the different divergent voices come together, then we have something to move on. And talking about dialogue, and Mamaka, you're very right, and we really appreciate how refugees is one of those rallying calls. Then we have, recount where a lot of people, may or may not be for, or referendum where a lot of people may or may not be for. But when it comes to dialogue, I would like to bring Mo up to talk to us what, before we get to recounting and referendum, what are some of those processes? What have you experienced in Libya? So please, Mo. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, Sylvie. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm very delightful to be with such amazing people and great panel. I just would like to stress out in Mamaka's intervention. What she said is great, and I agree with over, I would say, 95% of it.
Agree to disagree.
Well, we are here to agree to disagree, absolutely. So, I would like just to share a few tips with you according to our experience in the Libyan situation, which is very similar to yours. I started working with Sylvie over a year and a half ago now, and we started at the beginning here at the Congress, reaching out to Congress members, senators, trying to raise awareness about the situation in Cameroon and how can we prevent a catastrophe from happening. We tried hard to just reach out to every congressman and say, hey, we don't want another Libya in Cameroon. As you know, Cameroon, as everyone explained earlier, is the hub of Central Africa. You have the problem of Central Africa, you have the Boko Haram in Nigeria, and you don't want that issue to increase and to include Cameroon. So we would like to keep Cameroon stable as possible. However, we still need transition, right? Libya has been there for a long time, people suffering from poverty and from lack of services, from especially the Anglophonian region, they suffered for a long time, and I think this is the time to bring prosperity and change to Africa overall. So very briefly, I would like to share with you a few steps that I would urge that you think about before starting any collective efforts. I would say first, try to bridge differences. We all have our biases. Every one of us in this room have their own interests, values, and needs. So we would like to bridge common ground as much as possible. After that, I would highly urge that we increase the spectrum of participation, quality over quantity. So what teachers know, my lawyers don't know. What students know, my doctors don't know. Youth, women, diaspora, teachers, priests, increase basically the spectrum of the variety, I would say, of participation as much as possible so you would have a better outcomes. Also think of that before any negotiation, you should do your homework and think about a BACNAP, what we call in our field, conflict resolution, BACNAP, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So you would have alternatives, so you can negotiate freely and you have more space. I will argue that in order to have successful intervention, you need to prioritize your issues. Important issues comes before urgent issues. I heard issues of refugees and then the killing going on. That's urgent. That would be there for a while. But I will argue that focus on important issues first, like constitution, building institutions, reform the government, or whatever you think it's the priority right now. Also, I would say negotiation of coalition like this, one of the main goals of this effort is to at least not damage relationships between the different actors, right? So I would say trying to improve relationships between the diaspora, the lawyers, all kinds of activists to unite them and enhance their relationships. Most important part here, in any efforts to unite people, you will see spoilers. Spoilers, they will show up at any point, whether in the ground or even here in the diaspora level. So I would encourage you to include spoilers at the beginning. because they're going to be there and they will spoil anything we're working on. Uncover the actual needs, interests, and values of parties, including Libya. So we need to uncover their actual interests. Maybe he doesn't want to be in power, maybe he's looking for just money, maybe he's looking for protection. But we should try to reach out to every part of their situation and uncover their actual needs, interests, and values. And finally, I would say that do not rush results. Overthrowing regimes like that might take years. And building a new Cameroon, we're talking about 10 to 15 years. So do not rush outcomes and focus on the short-term goals, rather focusing on the long-term goals. Well, that's what happened in Libya. We're thinking about, we're going to have prosperous, democratic, free Libya within like 2 years. There we go. 8 years now, nothing happening. So we should reduce our basically expectations and focus on the short-term goals. And I would say that's it. Well, thank you so much for having me here today, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. And Libya is wonderful. For those from Libya, Cameroon is wonderful. And as you've heard, there's always a cautionary tale, right? So we're so happy that Mo was able to talk to us about, how that dialogue process should take place. Which, we're going to segue now into referendum. Again, nobody should get killed for their ideas, right? Whether we believe in what they're saying or not, democracy just means that let us give everybody a chance through the battle, right? So for us to have a consensus is great. As Judy said, as Mamaka said, well, we need to have a transition that leads to some kind of dialogue. There are many ways about, how that transition can look like and how that dialogue can look like. More work down on, what is dialogue, how, we can fit to the aftermath of Libya. When it comes to the issue of referendum, all of us agree that peace, when we ask folks, and I'm just going to put that out because I know that as it happens, I am, just on a personal note, my dad is from subdivision, which is in the Northwest. For those of you who may not know, my mom is Barranque, which is in the West. So when folks hear about referendum, especially my mother's people and folks who may be francophone, they think they want to split. Well, if folks do want to split, then we need to ask ourselves why, right? If folks do want a two-state, then we need to ask ourselves why. So for the different parts of Cameroon, when we hear referendum, just know all it means is voting, which means no war, right? Or reducing of the violence and the conflict. It is not a bad word. Referendum is not a bad word. It just means that if we're asking folks to drop their weapons, we need to give them another tool, right? For those of you, going to market, you know that people say if you don't have a cigarette in your mouth, you didn't have food, which is the reason why Philip Morris, right, does cigarette and does food. Because if you're going to take out and say no smoking, they're going to put something else in, right? So if we're going to take out the weapon, we're going to have to give them a vote. So everybody's saying kids should go back to school. Yes. If we're going to do that, I just want to put that out there before I bring my two wonderful leaders, that referendum is not, I want you to repeat after me, referendum is not a bad word. Those of you who know me know I curse. Referendum is not a curse word. To my francophone family, referendum just means let us drop the weapon and pick up a ballot. That is all it means. Folks should not die because they don't want to be part of us. Folks should not die because they have an idea. Referendum is not a bad word, okay? So, with that said, it gives me tremendous, well, let me just read out again, just to reaffirm, because I know that the contention in Cameroon is mostly, gives me wonderful, wonderful honor, pleasure that, Dr. FONTEM, will be doing his first public statement in a year or more, right here. He will talk about how we got here, referendum, and his particular interest with the referendum. Please, I need everybody to put your hands together. I know you did put your hands together for others. You were wonderful in welcoming them, but I want you to especially, join me in welcoming Dr. FONTEM.
Thank you very much. In the last 21 days, a lot of work has come up, and for us to come to a consensus, the Cameroon Consensus Coalition discussed the bulk of the issues that plague Cameroon in general and the northwest and southwest regions in particular. I think the main issues that came up were most concerned about the recount of the votes cast in the 2018 presidential elections so that the rightful winner can be proclaimed, and to stop the refugee crisis created by the war in the northwest and southwest regions, and organize a referendum with all options included so that the people of the northwest and southwest can determine their future in Cameroon. So today, I'm going to be talking about the federalism as an option in a referendum on the future of Southern Cameroon. And I have elected specifically to speak about one of the options, the federal option. But I think it is important for us to do a recapitulation of some of the issues that have led us to where we are today. When Southern Cameroon obtained its independence in 1961 and joined the Republic of Cameroon to form a federal republic, the two countries were meant to be equal partners with only defense and foreign relations as their common responsibility. By 1972, using force and political ruse, the president at that time, undertook to completely dismantle the federation. This generated a resentment among Anglophones, coupled with the absence of an explicit integration policy. As such, over the years, Anglophones have become more and more estranged as efforts were made to assimilate them. When the crisis broke out in 2016, government's disproportionate use of force and the reluctance to address the issues led the unions and civil society organizations to call for a return to the two-state federation as it had existed between 1961 and 1972. It was clear that Anglophones had lost everything and had been shortchanged in this supposed union, where over the years corruption, police brutality, economic deprivation, and political exclusion had made their lives sore. The call for the return to the two-state federation was imperative because Anglophones longed for a time when their society was transparent, democratic, and just. In fact, they resented the system which extolled mediocrity. Here are some of the issues, because it's important we do a quick recap of some of the issues that plagued the people at the time the crisis began. And also note that none of these issues has been satisfactorily addressed 2 years after it became a bone of contention. Students who scored 25 points in their high school certificate exam cannot enter medical school, whereas those with 5 points can enter, so long as they can afford the bribe money. In recruitments, Anglophones are always seriously disadvantaged under the disguised system of exclusion called regional balance. Census figures are often rigged to reduce the investment allocation for the Anglophone regions. Francophone judges trained in French civil law and do not speak English are sent to administer common law in the Anglophone regions. This has brought arbitrary detention and corruption corruption in the judiciary and made the lives of the people unbearable. Another issue that was the thrust of the teachers' discontent was Francophone teachers with no training in the English curriculum who were sent to teach in Anglophone schools, and despite protests and raging crises, continue to teach in those schools. In the middle of the dialogue, which was convened to redress particularly the educational grievances, we were arrested and thrown in jail for 8 months without trial. This was followed by other mass indiscriminate arrests, burning of villages, and the targeted killings of civilians. As a result, young men sought safety in the bushes and took up arms in self-defense. The government's scorched earth policy further radicalized the masses and forced a significant majority to seek restoration of the independence of southern Cameroon. In spite of the raging civil war and the brutality of the army that has scarred the people's lives, some people still believe that, wicked as our brothers from the East have been, we can still live with them in a federation if the international community intervenes to stop the carnage. It has been one of the discussions at this meeting and a resolution of the consensus coalition that a peacekeeping mission be pushed for and obtained in Cameroon so that durable peace steps towards a durable peace can begin. Because as it stands, it is clear from every indication that the government is not ready for dialogue. The synergy of forces that have worked on these issues have eventually crystallized on one main point, that we can build what we call a dispensation where most of the people, particularly those in the diaspora, can work together under the aegis of this consensus coalition to express their beliefs. And the major belief that we have been able to establish on all these issues is a referendum, which is necessary for Anglophones to determine their fate. This consensus position taken to ensure that is also taken to ensure that different shades are included on the referendum paper if and when it happens. There are 3 federalist options which the coalition unanimously agrees should be considered for the sake of equity and expansion to the right, since it has also expanded to the left by agreeing to include independence, which was never previously discussed in 1961. The federalist position is contingent on the belief that the wounds of the past can heal and the people will be able to live together again in or under one of the following self-governing arrangements. I think that since the restoration has been included, Barrister Bobga has expertise and better understanding of some of the issues that relate to that. I will focus mainly on the different shades of federalism. We have the 2-state federation. As we already said, it existed between 1961 and 1972. During this time, Southern Cameroon had its own administrative divisions, a vibrant economic system with a thriving banking sector, and a stable democratic culture fashioned after the British parliamentary system. There is still a nostalgia for this period when indiscriminate arrests and police brutality were not yet known. There is the 10-state federation, which is a more recent yearning. This is similar to the present system of 10 regions, except that its proponents wish for greater self-rule in all the regions of the country, as in Nigeria or the United States and Germany, where states have considerable control over their affairs. These proponents believe that through intermarriage and economics, the existing regions have become intertwined with each other to the extent that there should be no obstacles to these existing ties. There are also those who believe in the 4-state federation. This group believes that Cameroon can be remapped along ethnic lines. It is mostly held by the political elite who are determined to frustrate those options above the options we have mentioned above, which clearly are obtrusive to the centralized nepotistic hegemony. I would like to say that in fairness and the spirit of consensus, the coalition believes that the solution to the ongoing crisis can be achieved if Anglophones democratically express their choice in a referendum. And we have been on Capitol Hill pushing that to ensure that it happens. We have thus unanimously agreed that these three shapes be considered alongside the option of restoration in the event of a referendum. It is amazing how forgiving Anglophones are despite the genocidal actions of the brutal Cameroon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. FONTEM. As we know, we gained referendum. It's basically just a vote, right? It's not a bad word. It's just a vote, and we have options. And much like Mamaka when she ran for office for president of Cameroon, where she was on the ballot and others were on the ballot. So to have the diverse voices, even within referendum, come to a consensus that yes, I believe in this, but others should also live, right? Others should also have the free will to also choose. And with that, one of the choices that is out there and that we've seen that folks have fought for that value is restoration, independence, cessation. It comes from many. They've thrown many words at it to that actual action. But our next and final speaker, whom I'm so thrilled to have, Barrister Bobga, will talk about specifically on restoration. But before that happens, I just want to say that here in the United States, these schools of thought are not strange. It's not something that's just happening in a far-off place, right? Right here in the U.S., when one party is in power, there is a part of the country that wants to separate, right? That wants to secede, right? Right now, we have Republicans. California just had a ballot where they wanted to separate. They wanted to have Northern and Southern California, right? So this idea that folks want something different and separate do not have to lead to war and genocide and refugees and folks getting cut up, so no. And before Trump, President Obama, when the Democrats were in power, Texas was like, I'm out. We're the Republic of Texas. We don't need this. We're bigger and better. So this idea is not strange. It's not different. It has happened the world over. Cameroon is just a reflection of humans out there. What makes us terrible is that the oppressor, right? My name is Bello. Because at some point, we were oppressed by the Portuguese that, finally led to a name like Bello, right? So the colonial oppression, which Mamaka mentioned, that has not been well defined after colonization, has led to this. So with that, I would love to, Barrister Bobga, I don't know if you want to come to the podium, that would be wonderful, but thank you. Please join me in welcoming Barrister Bobga, please.
I particularly want to come here so that I should be my time.
You heard it first.
Thank you. Cabo always coming in. Thank you, Julie. I have some presentation before our discussion, because the speakers gave me the favor of running their time. I will steal some time after that. Similar pre-discussion brief by Cameroon. A brief introduction. Shortly after September 30, 1961, Southern Cameroonians have been victims of a creeping identity and cultural genocide. This project was conceived, constructed, and progressively executed on the principles of socio-political osmotic assimilation. It has been ideologically built the 2 cubes of sugar involved in the water process. The 2 cubes of sugar represent the 2 anglophone regions of de facto Cameroon with a U, which together are territorially coterminous with the SY United Nations Trust Territory of Southern Cameroon that navigated our way into independence by passing through a political valley of shadow of death called plebiscite. Thanks to the United Nations Resolution 1608 Roman 15, dated April 21, 1961, they still made it to independence. The relationship between the 2 Cameroons have over the years crystallized into one of continually growing tension. In the last 3 years, preceding the open declaration of war against Anglophones or Southern Cameroonians, the victim population witnessed an acceleration of the assimilation. We, the common law lawyers, essentially of the Southern Cameroon's extraction, rose up in defense of our juridical cultural legal system, inherited and adopted adaptively from the British common law introduced during the Trustage period. We were readily joined by other professions and trade unions like teachers, transporters, traders, etc. Within a very short time, the entirety of the Southern Cameroon's population, both within the territory and in the diaspora, stood up as one people again and demanded more resolutely than ever for a recognition and respect of their separate national identity, away from the horrific experiences of recolonization by the French Cameroon Republic. So what's the problem that we're facing now? In the present circumstances of unprecedented carnage, pillage, and destruction of property, betraying a design to render Southern Cameroonians extinct, what processes can guarantee a sustainable coexistence of the 2 Cameroons? As you've heard already, we've been working towards a consensus. And I want to say that it's not a consensus of the substance, but a consensus of the process to peace and prosperity.
That's right.
And today I'm called upon to talk about the people who share the ideas that I represent here, how we can use referendum. And this is what I have to say. The primary solution, based on the legal history of Southern Cameroon as a former United Nations Trust Territory, is that the proclamation of restoration of independent statehood of Southern Cameroon, made on October 1, 2017, by His Excellency Sisiko Ayotabe, now in prison, be recognized and respected. This would pave the way for the restoration of the long-standing international boundaries between the French Cameroon Republic and the Southern Cameroons that has now adopted the name Amazonia. Should this pathway seem too thorny for the international community, especially the United Nations, and the key players who all have interest in the Cameroon, in the region in which Cameroon finds itself, the question to pose at the referendum is this: whether or not the Southern Cameroonians would like their independent statehood acquired since October 1, 1961 to be restored, or to establish a relationship freely with the French Cameroon Republic through the means of a referendum conducted exclusively for the Southern Cameroonians. But with the conclusion of this intro, we have this to say: within the context of the importance of peace and security in Gulf of Guinea, geopolitical region, and provided the well-documented legal history of Southern Cameroon is not compromised at the altar of convenience on the basis of a rebuttable presumption of fact of constitutional union, that has never been between the two Cameroons. The Southern Cameroonians and Amazonians are willing to submit to a discussion of the feasibility of a referendum as a solution pathway on the question as constructed in the preceding paragraph. We recognize the obvious gaps in this opening brief and hope to fill them during the question and answer session as the first steps for constructive debate towards conflict transformation and restoration of sustainable peaceful coexistence. As I pleaded at the beginning, I would like to take a few minutes, not too much, to beef up some of the gaps before we start taking your questions. I want to clarify something here. The predicament of Southern Cameroon arises from the fact that the victors at the First, then the Second World War were worried about the implantation of communism in the heart of the sub-Saharan Africa. Why? Because the Bamidis who had suffered genocide, which is only being spoken of after the Southern Cameroonians have started complaining about genocide, they took refuge in Southern Cameroon. And precisely because that was a different nation, the French forces that fought alongside the Cameroon forces of Haiti were unable to cross the borders and chase the dissidents who had taken refuge in another country, like I am in the United States. People continue to make the mistake that there has supposed to be a one Cameroon. It might be from other contexts, but from a strictly legal standpoint, and the civilized world is organized on the basis of law, because that's the only way you can treat the excesses of human beings and make peaceful coexistence a possibility. Here is the thing. The two countries were cross countries. The Republic of Cameroon had its independence on the 1st of January 1960. Our own independence came in on the 1st of October 1961. Notwithstanding the fact that we were hamstrung and denied the option of acceding directly to independence for the reasons I gave earlier, and screwed up to have a plebiscite, which is almost the nature of a referendum, to choose either by becoming independent, we join Nigeria or we join the Republic of Cameroon. So what really happened? France led all French-speaking African countries. The only stubborn child among them was Mali. The vote tallies are available. They voted against Southern Cameroon, including Cameroon, acceding to independence by joining Cameroon. So we made an offer. And I used to make this, I'm in the habit of making this joke that when people put in their marriage certificate polygamy, they don't know that it gives the woman the option to marry two men at a time. We made the offer to join the Republic of Cameroon. They rejected it by their vote. And because the process essentially was for us to get independent, on the 30th of October, nothing stopped our independence. But on the 30th, no, on the 1st of October, 1961, but on the 30th of September, the eve of that independence, through a conspiracy of Britain and France, and for those of you who did European history, you will know that when you have kingdoms there, and the remnants of those kingdoms are still in France, they all belong to the House of Hanover, and they still talk till now. If you investigate the death of the Diana, you will see how active the communication between those families of the House of Hanover in France is alive today with Buckingham Palace. But that's another story. weird thing here is that Southern Cameroonians were willing to join on the basis of Resolution 1608. And Ahidjo committed, just like Tafawa Balewa committed, that should they join us, we are going to give them equal status in a two-state federation. That's what Cameroon committed. And the process was supposed to be worked out in a constitutional conference. Fuman was inconclusive. And if it was inconclusive, it doesn't matter how beautifully you write a contract, if that contract is not executed and sealed and delivered, there is no contract. There is no such thing in political theory as common law marriage. It is not by attrition that you acquire the status of the spouse towards your girlfriend or your boyfriend. If we had taken it up to this time, because the South Cameroonians are an extremely cultural set of people, and the young men have never gone to war. On the 30th of November, President Biya declared war after he had been killing and beating and arresting Southern Cameroonians. And it is recognized in the Bill of Rights that the United Nations established, from which many countries are inspired to establish their own Bill of Rights. That when you push a man to war, you push him up the war, in desperation, it will crash on you and it is legitimate. I thank you. Our time is short, but this is an ongoing discussion. And it should be understood, as Sylvie pleaded to our brothers from the Republic of Cameroon, that there is no hatred between us. And my sister disagrees with me that France has nothing to do with the situation in Cameroon. But my research demonstrates that not only France, but Britain and the United States also has interest. Because in the early 50s, it is the US Consul General in Lagos who advised that be careful, don't get the Southern Cameroon accede to independence because there could be an implantation of the communists there. That's documented. We are pleading that as Africans, we can only roll back colonization as suggested by my sister by mutually recognizing and respecting ourselves. Article 4B of the Constitutive Act of the African Union, which is inspired by a resolution that also caused an amendment of the Constitution of the Organization of African Unity, clearly states that the international boundaries established by the colonial masters are accepted and respected, notwithstanding that they cut across the same people in many countries, in between many countries. The Ghanaians, they know that from Asao to the outskirts of Accra are the Ewe people who are Togolese, and that was German Togoland, but they are in Ghana. So, while we want to tidy our house, let's first of all recognize and respect one another's identity. The crisis in Cameroon is one of identity, principally as relates to Southern Cameroon. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Barrister Bobga, guys. Barrister, I feel like you and I are like the same people. Like passionate. We don't agree on everything, but we're passionate. So yes, restoration is important. If we're going to drop the weapons, we're going to need the battle. Federation, 2-state, 10-state, 4-state. One of the R's, very important part of the R, because they're all equally important, right, is the recount. At the Cameroon Working Council, we
provided insight. We worked on trying to get the 7 members of the presidential candidate committee, if I can put it that way, of like folks who are running for president. We worked on trying to get them to have one coalition candidate. We were excited when we went throughout Cameroon. We had a team of 50 who knocked on all their doors, from Gagahan to Serge, Tomba, to everybody. Met them in the US, met them there, but Mr. Kanto and Mr. Mona came together. And there's a group called BAS. My good friend, Alex. Alex worked on so many different campaigns together. He code, which all of you know, that track Mr. Nia all around the world. He's been a fighter way before code, during code, and now he's with BAS. And BAS is the Brigade Anti-Sardina, and he'll be talking in French as because Cameroon has 2 national languages. So we are very comfortable, having allies who support referendum, right? Who support refugees, and as a consensus, we support recount. So Alex will come talk to us. What is recount? What is BAS? How has this come to this point? And
d'abord, bonjour, je suis Alexandre Diaco et nous avons vécu, je ne sais pas si je vais appeler ça tragédie, nous avons vécu l'élection qui s'est déroulée au pays.
My name is Alex, and we all have experienced the election that took place.
Et franchement, je ne veux pas prendre la parole. J'avais orienté toutes mes questions à notre leader du CBB Kawalai, mais ma soeur m'a décidé au courant.
My questions and insight were going to be directed to our leader, Makawala of the CPP, who is the political, that the CPP is a political party, and this recount is now inferring to my response. This recount is about political parties and recounts and elections. So he had crafted his message for her, but the recount and BAS have not only supported us, funded us, and worked with us. So they are key components of this 3R. I just want to put that out there. Yeah, he's going to state them. He's going to state them as part of BAS.
Alors, la base a été mise sur pied par le mouvement qui a été lancé à Paris. Et du coup, certains compatriotes qui vivaient ici aux États-Unis, nous avons pris le pas, à savoir le boycott d'appuyer d'abord les artistes. Et ensuite, on a passé les artistes aux gens à tous ceux-là qui travaillent dans le système, qui volent nos richesses. Nous avons encore le dernier mouvement récent qui est la CAN qui devait se tenir au Cameroun avec ce que ça a engorgé comme milliards et qu'on ne sait pas franchement là où tout cet argent est allé.
So BAS, which is Brigade Anti-Sardina, basically just a little bit of background, Anti-Sardina is for the sardine and bread that the dictator gives out. And BAS considers themselves a brigade anti-sardine, which is anti-corruption, pretty much. And it started in Paris, within the diaspora. Do you see a theme here? And crisis diaspora, anti-Sardina diaspora. And then the United States picked it up. Their leader and spokesperson, Adelaide, was on our panel at a briefing we had last month. And Alex is part of that. Some of the things they've started working on is looking at those corrupt, people in government, including artists who are corrupt, and going after them and letting them know that they can use their platform for good and for justice. And also looking at CAN,
which is the African Cup of Nations, which is a soccer competition, which Cameroon is actually the reigning champion. So as you can see, they're coming at this from a creative part, from sports to artists. Thank you.
Je suis là parce que ma soeur m'a parlé et ça m'a ému et je vais nous dire, celui qui est comme celui qui a été poussé par le vote populaire, que nous connaissons tous en la personne de Maurice Kanto, il a demandé qu'il y ait un recompte de coup by cause. Et aux dernières nouvelles que l'on a suivies, le département américain s'adressait, c'est déjà une bonne avancée de demander les cessations des actions dans le NOSO et que tout redevienne à la normale. Ils ne sont pas appesantis sur le phénomène des recomptages des élections. Alors ma question était, ça va aller dans le sens tout à l'heure à notre leader concernant le recompte.
So, when it comes to the election, the clear winner appears to be Mr. Kanto. C'est lui le gagnant?
Oui.
Okay, so Mr. Kanto is the winner, from his perspective, right? That's his truth, right? Mr. Kanto is the winner, but because folks like Transparency International, African Union, and others have looked into the fraudulent and nature of the elections, so there should be a poll by poll, which is something that the United States, including the Cameroon American Council, actually requested the United States to look into those elections, and they put out a statement talking about a poll by poll recount, which is something, in fact, that Alex is saying that Mr. Kanto and BAS and MRC and just other Cameroonians, right, who and allies, for that matter, who are concerned about elections in Cameroon have requested for a poll by poll, which is also was part of the recount, which was part of the consensus.
Je pense que ça c'est ce que je voulais dire. Si maintenant je peux m'emboîter avec mes questions à notre leader, j'avais souligné quelques questions ici. Nous avons vu sur les réseaux sociaux, après le 6 novembre, votre maison a été d'un coup encerclée. Et ma question est la suivante. Avec tout ce qui se passe dans le système électoral camerounais aujourd'hui et notre cour constitutionnelle, qu'est-ce que le CPP compte faire pour que plus jamais, on dit déjà que nous n'allons plus vivre cela, les choses ne vont plus jamais se passer pareillement. Nous voulons savoir ce que le CPP compte pour que plus jamais ce genre de choses ne se répètent au Cameroun. Et qu'est-ce que le CPP compte mettre en œuvre pour que si jamais ces recomptages doivent avoir lieu, qu'elles aient effectivement lieu.
Monica, before you answer that, I'm just going to wrap up and then we can get into the Q&A. So we are so grateful that BAS is able to be with us. Please extend my gratitude to Elaid and Mish and all the wonderful, wonderful Fabrice, all the wonderful folks at BAS who have been so supportive, provided us with resources and just tremendous support. So we're really grateful for that. So as we put this into a close, this will be the final question, actually. Again, we just don't have the resources to extend this further. I just want to say that the Cameroon American Council is thrilled that we've had Mr. Bobga, we've had Judy, Monica, Dr. FONTEM, Alex, and the folks at BAS on the consensus of 3R, refugees, recount, referendum. And we're going to open one last question, and we're going to shut it down. So if you have more questions, the best place is just to go right upstairs, let them know. There should be more and more briefings on Cameroon, right? There should be specific briefings just on refugees. There should be specific briefings just on recounts. There should be specific briefings just on referendum. There should be a specific briefing just on restoration, just on 10-state, 2-state. You know why? Because your tax dollars go to pay for that, right? When the Israeli have work to do, right, they will have a specific, briefing just on Gaza. Then they'll have another one on the occupied occupied section of Israel. Then they'll have another one on the Christians in Israel. So if Israeli government and the country of Israel can have tens of thousands of briefings, there is no reason why this should be the one and only, right? To the good folks who are coming out of South Africa, we put out a request to have a UN briefing on Cameroon. We're hopeful that when your government in South Africa, as Cameroonians in South Africa, when South Africa comes to the Security Council, you will push them, right? You're going to go to the embassy in DC while you're here today. There is a South African caucus here in Congress. You will seek them out, right? So that's what we're hopeful that you would do. So from our end, we're going to take that one question from Bass, and from our account, we'll close it out when she responds, and I'll just do a little bye, and that'll be it for us. So thank you. Monica, please translate the question and please answer it for us. Thanks, everyone.
May I suggest something?
Sir, thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. The question, I think, goes fundamentally to the electoral system in Cameroon. And I think the greatest purpose, his question is, how do we make sure that never again do we go through the type of elections that we saw in October in Cameroon? And I think that to me, the sole value, you asked me the question as a political party leader, so you must know that my position as a political party leader, that of my party and several other parties, was that we should not go for elections. And that was because of two reasons. One was that the electoral system we knew that it was exactly what it turned out to be. And two was that it remains inconceivable for us that the government which is organizing elections can be shooting at citizens in one part of the country, and then in the other part we say, okay, this is fine, no problem, we're going to elections. So those were the two reasons we thought we should not go to elections. Now, the elections had value. The elections had value, and we are very glad for that value. One of the values, what we gained out of that election is the mobilization that you are a part of, because Cameroonians had become quite indifferent to what was happening politically in Cameroon, and we saw mobilization on the ground and mobilization internationally. One of the things that's important for my party is that that mobilization does not dwindle down or get lost because the election turned out to be the hurdle which, honestly speaking, we all knew that it was going to be. So I think the mobilization needs to continue so that we get to fundamental change in Cameroon. Two is that we do not believe, and we have never seen anywhere where you beat a dictator through elections. You don't beat an autocrat through elections, because the definition of autocracy is that one person has captured the entire state, has captured all the institutions of the state. So you cannot, on the one hand, say that one person has complete control of the National Assembly, the government, the judiciary system, the electoral board, and so on. And at the same time, you say you're going to go to elections with that person and beat him in that system. So for us, what is important today, I think you missed it, is that we must come together, all of the factions. Nobody is going to get a solution to anything as long as the BIA regime is sitting there. So we must bring that regime to a close. How do we do that? We do it the way Burkina Faso did it, the way Tunisia did it, the way Egypt did it. Dictators are brought down by massive non-violent action inside the country, in the place where the government is sitting. So that is our objective. And as I sit with you right now, we work on two things. One is the education of the people, because we can never neglect what these 58 years have done to the average Cameroonian citizen. So we must educate people on their rights. We must educate them on the need to fight back and to do so without violence, which is a strategy, how to fight without violence. So that is what we do on a daily basis, and we do that until we get a critical mass that can act, that can carry out non-violent protests in a way against the regime to bring it down. The last thing I'll say is that we continue also our organization as well as others. People know the Aya Foundation, they know the organization of WALLA, and our organization Stand Up for Cameroon. Right now, all of us are mobilized to ensure that the internally displaced persons in Cameroon and the refugees spend a decent end of year. So we are having an event on the 29th of December. Aya Foundation is on the ground both in Nigeria and in Cameroon. WALLA's Foundation is on the ground in Cameroon. All of us right now mobilize. So we would like to make an appeal to Cameroonians of all walks of life. We are talking about at least 750,000 people who should receive something as we go towards the close of 2018.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to wrap up by talking about the three things that we're asking the U.S. Senate to do. So we're able to get Congressman Einhoff, Senator Einhoff, James Einhoff, Republican of Oklahoma, to help us put this together. And the three things that we're asking them is one, to have a U.S. Resolution on Cameroon, right? A U.S. Senate resolution on Cameroon that would incorporate referendum and actually mention the word restoration, right? Because you see some of the letters that we've been able to put out. We can just put out those letters based on our resources, right? We're not going to do the research and the work that is needed to talk about referendum, recount, restoration. We're just not going to do that because we just don't have the funds, right? And the resources to do that. But guess who can do that? All of you. That's what you're going to do, right? You're going to go upstairs, you're going to knock on some doors, you're going to tell them what you need them to do. So we're asking the U.S. Government to make strong resolutions that include those keywords you want to hear. You don't want them to say cessationist, then you can tell them the word you want to use. You don't want them to say restoration, then you tell them the word you want to use. You don't want them to say separatist, then you tell them the word you want to use, right? Because when the U.S. government puts out anything, they go through that 10,000 times. Every single word has a place there, right? So a lot of times they'll send me a draft and I'll be like, put it this way, no, put that no, right? So you go back and forth, back and forth. So that's the kind of work that you are going to get to do. So either you're going to get somebody to do it or you are going to do it, right? And I trust that you all be doing it. Everyone up here. Kirikou was here before, Mr. Bobga, Mr. FONTEM, Mamaka, Judy, like everyone here has been here before and to work on this. So that's one. A resolution that includes the key things that she wants. One. Two, you want a hearing, right? So a hearing is a little bit different from a briefing. A hearing is a little bit more intense, right? A hearing is, they will call on folks. Usually, unfortunately, they always call people like Amnesty International, Transparency International. They never really call those who are on the ground, right? But you want to make sure when there's a hearing that there's a Cameroon diaspora talking about that. And the third thing, the U.S. government can actually go to Cameroon. Our congressman out of Oklahoma, Steve Russell, he was in Cameroon at our request. He's our founder of the Congressional Cameroon Caucus. He was in Cameroon in February. So all the offices that you've been to, tell them, come to Cameroon. Come on the ground. Come look at those ballots. Even before the recount. You want the recount mass? Tell them to come and look at those ballots. Do they even exist? Have they been burnt out? You want, 2-state, 10-state restoration, etc. Tell them they'll see what is happening. They do that to Israel. They do that to Latin America. They use your tax dollars. They go to other people's countries. They can use their tax dollars to your country, right? They can do that. Resolution, go to Cameroon and a hearing. That's what you want. You want them to use your tax dollars. The people who are in Maryland, Senator Van Hollen and Senator Cardin is so important. You know why? Why? One, Van Hollen is in the appropriation committee. You know what is an appropriation committee? Those are the people that cut the check. You live in Maryland, there's no reason why 100 of you cannot be here and get up 100 offices or show up at Van Hollen's office and tell him, dude, if you're not going to do this, we are not going to vote for you because it means you're lying to us.
It doesn't matter whether you're a citizen or not, as long as you're a taxpayer. Because if you have kids, when your children buy, I don't know, lollipop, there's a tax attached to it, right? As long as you're a taxpayer in Maryland, you can go up there to Van Hollen's office and say, look, right now, why aren't you doing this, that, and the third? Van Hollen cuts the check. It's an appropriation committee. Mr. Bobga and Mr. FONTEM were at his office recently, right? You know, we two of our leaders who we trained to work on and bring all these diverse groups together and train them to do advocacy, right? You can ask Van Hollen for that. You can ask Ben Cardi. Do you know why he's important? Ben Cardi's on the Foreign Affairs Committee, guys. Ben Cardi makes the laws, right, that pertains to Africa. He goes to every other country in the world except which one? Cameroon. Where's the biggest diaspora? Cameroon. This briefing should not have been hosted by Oklahoma. You know who should have hosted this briefing? The offices that went to Van Hollen, Cardi. Those are the people that should have been hosted, but they did not do it. So if you're going to have the largest Cameroonians in your district and you don't host a hearing or briefing on Cameroon, then do you even matter? Right? In 2018, many of you voted for Cardi. Right? Thank you. Reverend Asson says she did. She and her family, right? Her friends, right? They voted for Cardi. Why can Cardi not have restoration? I know Reverend Asson because I see your name on here. You say you're for restoration. So why did Cardi not have a letter that says restoration? He just put out a letter. You know what happened? When we went to the office, they said, oh yeah, we sent it to Sylvie to check. It doesn't need to be, I don't have the resources to be putting out all those words. I don't have the research. But guess who does? 200 of you do. You can have them do that, right? They can send it to you. So, Ben Cardi and Van Hollen, and I'm going to curse right now, are full of donkey doo-doo. Right? Ben Cardi and Van Hollen are full of S-H-I-T.